Good afternoon, everyone. I am Brianna Alexis L. Oka, and I will be reporting about gender and development markers in education. So, school is one of the places which shows gender issues. Many studies show different matters of discrimination, both of boys and girls, and many adjustments still needed for the pursuit of equality between genders in education. It is really a big challenge towards our teachers and the higher-ups to cater the different needs of the students, which is why formulation of gender and development markers in education transpired. So what is gender and development markers in education? So this refers to the development programs, perspective, and processes that support the actualization of human potentials, and obviously or evidently looks past the individual's gender. So these are the following gender and development or Gad markers in education. First is NADA's 2010 Revised Harmonized Gad Guidelines. Second is Women's Edge Plan. And third is the Magna Carta of Women or MCW. So these three sounds familiar naman no, since they were previously discussed, so I think it's easy na to understand the roles in education. So the first Gad marker that we are going to talk about is the 2010 Revised Harmonized Gad Guidelines. So it is designed to help monitor the gender responsiveness of academic programs and projects. The NADA 2010 Guidelines for Gender Mainstreaming have general GAD monitoring indicators for basic and higher education. So it encompasses everyone, whether the student or learner is in primary, secondary, or tertiary education. Now, these monitoring indicators refers to participation, enrollment, positive performance in standardized tests. Meanwhile, in higher education, the performance of male and female students in licensing and board exams is assessed, as well as women enrollees, graduates, and distribution of gender per academic degree or program. As for employment in the education sector, the number of teachers or administrators per gender is evaluated for public, private, and vocational institutions. Indicators used were relative to where these individuals belong, if na student ba na or employee or unsa pa. The guidelines of NADA for gender mainstreaming look at the proportion of women who enroll and graduate, the courses or academic tracks each gender enrolls in, how gender sensitive the school curricula, programs, and services are, the presence of non-sexist career counseling, and the mechanisms for addressing sexual harassment on campus. The NEDA 2010 handbook formulated the criteria for assessing the gender sensitivity of school curricula, programs, and services. Now, this assessment includes whether the institution promotes gender-fair language in the classroom or educational materials, and the existence of non-sexist career counseling. I think it gave highlight to such because, diba, there is an evidence stereotyping na if you're female, you're most likely to pursue jobs related to, let's say, literature or arts and others, while males are expected to land on jobs like on the firm, for example, or leadership roles and politics. These assumptions or expectations may systematically distort personal interests and interfere with the careers and lives of many of our colleagues and students, both female and male. So I have a clip that I would like you all to see.
This afternoon, we're going to draw people doing different jobs. And the first job we're going to draw is a firefighter.
Have a think in your head what a firefighter looks
Oh, we're
like.
doing the firefighter.
What's your firefighter called?
Mine's called Firefighter Gary. Firefighter Stan. Firefighter Simon. He's big and strong. He's got a big helmet on.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Next, we're going to draw a surgeon.
Have you thought of a name for your surgeon?
Jim Bob.
Jim Bob.
He's a brain surgeon. I think he would wear a stethoscope. He gives you medicine.
That's his ambulance.
OK, next, we're going to draw a fighter pilot.
This is his jet plane. He rescues people. He likes to do stunts in the air and stuff.
OK, now, who would like to meet these people for real?
Yeah! They're dressed up.
My name's Tamsin, and I'm a surgeon in the NHS.
My name's Lauren and I'm a pilot in the Royal Air Force.
My name's Lucy. I'm a firefighter in the London Fire Brigade.
So who wants to know how to do an operation?
Who's putting it on?
I'm trying my
Everyone's
stethoscope.
We put this in here. There you go. Now you're a proper fighter pilot.
So into your ears. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
It's really good. It's much better, yeah, it's much better than the kids' one.
Got him.
Now, diba, from the video, we can say that it's really essential to open the eyes of students at such a young age, especially in terms of career paths, that not all jobs is solely limited to a single gender. The NEDA 2010 handbook also included the presence of a Committee on Decorum and Investigation, or CODI, for sexual harassments occurring inside the campus. So the functions of CODI includes receiving and investigating complaints of sexual harassment, submission of report of its findings with a corresponding recommendation to the disciplining authority for decision. And so the CODI generally leads the conduct of discussions about sexual harassment within the office to increase understanding and prevent incident of sexual harassment. The inclusion of a GAD agenda in the teacher's training and education is also a consideration for gender responsiveness in education. So this agenda must extend to projects, reports, and policies. Lastly, the NEDA report states that women must participate actively in the decision-making bodies of a school. It is assessed through the number of women in educational boards, parent-teacher association, and teachers' organizations. So basically, women are highly encouraged to take on active roles in institutions. Now let's talk about the Women's Edge Plan. So the Women's Edge Plan addresses previous gaps in the PDPW and PPGD and calls attention to emerging issues on gender responsiveness. So the Women's Edge Plan by the PCW, or Philippine Commission on Women, states that institutions can add and consider gender in all aspects of education, making the curriculum gender fair. Through training, teachers are sensitized to the different needs of all genders, with special consideration to women. I think I have emphasized this before, and I will emphasize it again, that women are deemed as a disadvantaged group in our society, which is why most programs are designed with high consideration to women. And so, the need for gender fair education is for the purpose of molding an institution to be a safer and more gender-inclusive place. Like its predecessors, the Women's Edge Plan looks at gender biases in classroom teaching, discrimination against students who are pregnant outside of marriage, sexual harassment, and other forms of violence against women in school. Diba, have you noticed that when a teenage girl is pregnant, she is the one who receives all the bad comments, the discrimination, and whatnot, while the teenage boy, not so much. So it is really relevant that discrimination against pregnant students is given attention. However, this does not mean na it's normalized na, which is why teen wellness and sexual and reproductive health and rights are part of the gender mainstreaming agenda. These factors are included to raise awareness about gender-based violence. As a result, sex education is promoted. And for the last Gad marker, which is the Magna Carta of Women. The Magna Carta of Women, or MCW, is a revolutionary law that seeks to eliminate other issues women and girls face within education. Specifically, Section 13 of the MCW adopts the CEDAW by stating that women must have equal access to scholarships and trainings. Similarly, it states that non-acceptance or expulsion of teachers or students who are pregnant outside of marriage is unacceptable. The Department of Education, Order Number 40, Series of 2012, prohibits any form of discrimination against any child because of age, sex, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Like the MCW, this memorandum prevents discrimination against teachers and students who become pregnant outside of marriage. The MCW promotes the addition of women in non-traditional disciplines or vocational courses within higher education as prescribed by international treaties. By promoting gender-free language and the elimination of gender stereotypes in educational materials, the MCW demands that institutions of education adopt mechanisms to address these issues. Other institutional mechanisms mandated by the MCW include teacher trainings to help address gender and development issues, gender education for those in the education sector, and the creation of partnerships among and across different sectors involved in education. Mandating a CODI or Committee on Decorum and Investigation that will handle sexual harassment cases is hoped to address a culture of gender-based violence that hinders women from going to school. However, the MCW does not require institutions to introduce preventive measures against harassment. The integration of gender-sensitive teaching strategy remains to be a challenge among educators. This social issue requires more in-depth exploration, especially in the classroom, to promote its significance and determine its applicability and effectiveness. Especially at this time and age, youth are becoming more knowledgeable and exposed to various changes, and also becoming more sensitive as well. That is why it's really a challenge for the higher-ups to make sense of some concerns. With this being said, special measures have to be taken to remove gender as a hindrance for one's attainment of education. The MCW states specific provisions for 3 educational institutions to ensure the protection of women's education. Now, these institutions include the Department of Education, or DepEd, the Commission on Higher Education, or CHED, and the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA. Also, I would like to add an existing parallel learning system. It is called ALS, or the Alternative Learning System. I think you all heard about this. Again, it is a parallel learning system in the Philippines that provides a practical option to the existing formal instruction. When one does not have or cannot access formal education in schools, ALS is an alternate or substitute. The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, is also cited to provide women from marginalized sectors, so those who are indigenous persons or IPs, women in rural areas, and also women who are migrant workers, to access training as deemed as necessary. So this ends my part. Thank you for listening, and I hope you understood my report. Thank you.